Hello, and welcome to a Pokemon XD Gale Darkness video, where today we will be completing the game with the Gengar line. Now, with this being the first spooky month, I think it only makes sense to also include the first Ghost-type Pokemon, which are Gastly, Haunter, and Gengar. So I think they're going to do fairly well, because I remember watching videos before I started making my own videos about how Gastly is one of the best Pokemon, at least in Generation 1, to beat the game with. And I think that partially has to do with Generation 1 mechanics, but I do think in Generation 3 it looks pretty decent. It has 30 HP, 35 attack, 30 defense, 100 special attack, 35 special defense, and 80 speed, and gets access to a lot of Ghost-type moves, as well as Psychic, Dark, Normal, Electric, and even Fighting-type moves, which could come in handy. Now, I do think that just looking at its first few moves, it could definitely be a bit of a struggle in the early game, but I think once I start getting better moves, it'll definitely start doing very well. So with that, let's go ahead and get into it. Our Gastly in particular has a bashful nature, which doesn't really do anything, which is honestly fine. It also gets access to the Levitate ability, which makes it so I don't get hit by ground type moves, which is definitely really nice considering I'm part poison type. And according to Bulbapedia, at level 10 I get access to the moves Lick, Hypnosis, and Spite. So with that, let's go ahead and get right into the game. Now the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and pick up the move Mimic, because while Lick is okay, it's not very strong on its own. And I go into my first battle against one of the main trainers here, and immediately overestimate just how strong Gastly is, and I get locked into this battle where I can't hit the Zigzagoon, and the Zigzagoon can't hit me until eventually it struggles, which was the plan, but I was too weak to actually survive a struggle, whereas 5 levels later, I actually can survive a struggle or two and beat him. Now that strategy is actually pretty hard to pull off, so eventually I get access to the move Curse at level 16. I'm going to teach that over Spite, and immediately we can see how much better Curse is compared to Spite, because even though I lose half my health, a lot of normal types can't actually hit me at this point in the game. Or if they can, it's very weak moves like Astonish. So it only takes 4 or 5 turns for the Curse to take down the Snubbull, and with Mimic I'm able to actually do a little bit of damage as well. And I beat a trainer that would otherwise be even stronger than the first one. And then after that, a lot of the battles were pretty easy, and just using the curse strategy got me through a lot of the easy normal types as well. So I come to the Cypher base, and I decide to fight Green first because I think I have the best type-up matchup against it. And on top of that, I do think that I'm not going to win this fight, so I'm just going to use this as experience to level up a bit, so that eventually I can either beat him or someone else. Anyway, I guess time for a little bit of rambling now. If you are enjoying this video, consider liking, and if you have any Pokemon suggestions down below for Spooky Month, put them down below, or just any other Pokemon suggestions as well. I will get to them eventually. And yeah, so one thing I didn't realize about those Gen 1 videos that I was watching is that apparently Gastly actually learns Nightshade at level 1, meaning that it could actually get through a lot of those early game bosses like Brock and Misty very easily. But in this game, only having access to Lick makes a lot of the battles very long and very slow. As you can see just watching this footage here, I'm doing very little damage to the Pineco, and actually once I actually started looking at the screen, basically, I realized that Pineco only has Tackle, so it's definitely safer to keep it alive rather than the Oddish. Anyway, so yeah, I'm definitely starting to have my doubts about Gastly, but hopefully once I can get Nightshade in a couple levels, this whole thing will turn around and I'll start flying through the game. So anyway, I take down this Oddish here, and then out comes the C-Dot, which is definitely the biggest threat here. It's level 17, so it's going to do a lot of damage, and I go for Curse here because I don't really have anything to do a lot of damage to it, and I go for Hypnosis. I luckily get it, but unfortunately, unless it actually stays asleep for another 3 turns, I think, there's no way I'm surviving. Unless it actually just doesn't wake up, and I beat the green trainer first try. Huh. I really didn't think that was going to happen. Well, that's nice. Anyway, like I said, at level 21 I get Nightshade, which I'm going to teach over Lick, because honestly Lick is starting to just feel very lackluster in power, and I think Nightshade will do more damage anyway, for the most part. And at level 25, Gastly would evolve into Haunter, but I fainted when I leveled at level 25, so I leveled up to level 26. And strangely it didn't evolve, so I had to just port the Haunter over, and with a new evolution means new stats. So Haunter has 45 HP, 50 attack, 45 defense, 115 special attack, 55 special defense, and 95 speed. So it's definitely quite a bit faster and a little bit stronger, but it's definitely still weak, both specially and physically. So I could see that being a little bit of a problem. But with that, let's go ahead and go on to the boss of the area, which is Lovrina. She leads with a Love Disc and a Beautifly. I send out Haunter, I use Nightshade, and it's going to be a 2-shot on the Love Disc. And Beautifly actually has Thief, so I decided to mimic that because Dark type is special in this game, and unfortunately the Ghost type is physical, so a lot of my moves haven't been doing as much damage as they could. But as you can see there, Thief would still be a 2-shot, and I lose. And this is where I found out that because I didn't evolve at level 25, I actually missed out on the move Shadow Punch. So after about 20 minutes of doing Mount Battle, I racked up enough Poke points to get Shadow Punch again, and we go back into the fight. And you can see the stark difference, because I'm able to one-shot both the Beautifly and the Roselia. And then out comes Delcatty. Now unfortunately I can't actually touch Delcatty, so I'm actually going to mimic Water Gun here just to get as much damage as I can. I did try using Curse, but unfortunately because it brought me so low, both of these Pokemon were able to take me down in just a single turn. But with Delcatty down, one more Shadow Punch finishes off the Love Disc, and we beat Lovrina. Now of course you can't have a Pokemon XD Gale Darkness video without the obligatory Mirror Bee. Hello Mirror Bee. And at level 39 I get access to the move Dream Eater, which I'm going to teach over Curse, because even though it's also just as inconsistent, I don't have to lose half my health to it, and on top of that I can heal if I can pull it off. And at the top of the ONBS building I catch the Ralts here, because I want to steal the Twisted Spoon item just in case I need extra power on Psychic later. At the Real Game Tower, I pick up my 2 favorite TMs, a Hidden Power and Protect, and at level 40 I decided to actually evolve my Haunter into Gengar, and that's because I was looking at very similar Pokemon with similar base stats, and you had Ampharos, who has the same base stat total as Gengar, who evolved at level 30, which is really low, and Aggron, who only has 30 more base stats overall, who evolved at level 42. So I decided 40 would probably be a good in-between, and it gives us a nice amount of time with Haunter. Anyway, with that evolution, we now have new stats. We have 60 HP, 65 attack, 60 defense, 130 special attack, 75 special defense, and 110 speed. So I really don't have to worry about being outsped by anything. And with a special attack that high, there's a good chance I can take down basically anything as soon as I get a decent special move. And of course, before I leave, I also teach Hidden Power, which I'm going to figure out soon is actually Hidden Power Ice, which is pretty decent because it'll hit a lot of the types that Gengar really can't hit at all, and it's just decent type coverage. Anyway, we move on to the next boss fight against Snaddle. I go for Shadow Punch, which gets a crit and one-shots the Quagsire, so I don't know if it actually would be a one-shot. Then I go for another Shadow Punch, which takes down the Lunatone. Out comes Cast Form. And I should probably have just taken this down, but I decided to risk it all on a Hypnosis to try to heal up a little bit, because using Dream Eater actually heals a bit of the damage that you do. So I gained about 40 hit points. Another Shockwave. I go for Shadow Punch because it's neutral, and with Stab it does decent damage. Not enough to take down the Metang in a single hit though. And I'm getting very low on health now. Another Shockwave, taking me down to 22. Shadow Punch, and as long as it doesn't get a crit, I think I'm safe, which I am, and I beat Snaddle on the first attempt. Huh. Now before I go into the next boss fight, I go ahead and teach Psychic, which I'm just going to replace Dream Eater because Psychic's just a better move. And we go in. I don't have to worry about the fake out strategy because I'm a ghost type, so I'm able to take down the Electrode immediately. And the Nuzleaf actually does quite a bit of damage with Feint Attack. So I take down the Vile Plume, but after another with a crit, it's pretty obvious to me I need to take down the Nuzleaf now. Out comes Skarmory. Whiscash uses Rock Tomb, but I'm much faster than either of these Pokemon, so I don't need to worry about being outsped. I take down the Whiscash, and a couple hidden powers should finish off the Skarmory. A Steel Wing is not enough, and I beat Gonzap on the first attempt. Okay. Well, at the other side of his lair, I pick up the TM for Shadow Ball, and I go ahead and teach that over Shadow Punch because it's just strictly better. And we move on to our next fight, which is against Gorgon. Now he leads with a Lairon and a Celio, and while usually they would use Protect and Earthquake, in this battle because I have Levitate, they're not going to use that. So I'm able to take down the Celio and the Slowking right off the bat. And I decide to go for the Ursaring here. It uses Protect for some reason, but that's alright, I'll just use Psychic again, and it goes for Protect again. Okay, so the thing that's happening here is that Ursaring actually doesn't have a move to hit us, so it's just spamming Protect. So it's actually not a threat whatsoever, whereas this Lairon is doing quite a bit of damage to me and also has lowered my defense. So it's definitely a big threat right now. A Psychic nearly takes it out in a single hit, and after one more it goes down. And then out comes Primeape. I shouldn't be outsped by this, and there's a good chance I one-shot it, which I do. And then it's just the Hypno left, who is definitely slower and should probably go down to a single Shadow Ball, which it does. And so it's just the Ursaring left. It uses Protect, and it uses Protect again, and fails, and goes down. So that's Gorgon on the first attempt. Man, okay, so the early game was definitely a bit of a struggle, but so far, Gengar and Haunter have definitely pulled through. So even though this isn't a top tier time, I do think that it could finish fairly well. So we move on to Lavrina, and unfortunately we are a female, which is inherently worse because we can get attracted by 2 Pokemon instead of just 1. But also, the Gardevoir was the bigger threat between the two, so I guess being female in this case could have been better. Anyway, out comes the Farfetch now. I go for Psychic to take it down. I get a crit, which I don't know mattered. And then out comes Altaria. Now, I know that's definitely a one-shot with Hidden Power, because it's 4 times weak to it. And then it's just the Gorbis left, which, as long as I didn't get confused there, I take it down. And at the top of the mountain, I go ahead and teach Protect over Hypnosis, because at this point, Hypnosis is too much of a gamble, and it's not worth the risk. So, anyway, we move on to the next fight against Snaddle, and I go for Shadow Ball right off the bat to see how much it does to Matang. It's not quite a one-shot, so that is a little unfortunate. I go for Protect here just to heal up a little bit, and then I go for another Shadow Ball to finish it off. And Matang goes down. Out comes Scizor. Now this thing could definitely be a threat if it's going for Silver Wind, but it seems to just be going for Steel Wing, which isn't nearly as bad, because it's doing fairly little damage. And the waterfalls really aren't doing that much either. So I'm able to take the Scizor down in just a couple Psychics, and then out comes his first Shadow Pokemon, which is a Shadow Soul Rock. So I should be able to one-shot it with Shadow Ball, which I do, and then out comes Castform. Waterfall takes me down to yellow health, so I go for Protect here just to heal up a little bit. Play it safe, especially considering the Starmie's coming up next. And the Starmie is really fast, but there is a bit of a question on whether or not it can actually outspeed me. But to play it safe, I heal up just a little bit, and then I go for Shadow Ball, outspeed it, and take it down in a single hit. So all that's left is the Quagsire. I go for Psychic, and it goes down. So that's Snaddle on the first attempt. Moving on to Ardos. Now I do predict this one being kinda difficult, and most of that comes down to how Swallow's going to react. I'm able to take down the Alakazam on the first turn. Swellow sets up Shadow Sky, which isn't great. I go for Protect here. It goes for Shadow Half, which is really nice. Now I don't have to worry about it attacking next turn. But the thing is I decide to actually take down the Swellow, because at this point, I forgot that Kingdra actually had Dragon Breath, and did that Hydro Pump just miss? I think that might be the first ever miss I've seen of Hydro Pump coming from that Kingdra. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Basically, I forgot it had Dragon Breath, so I thought it was going to be locked into using Double Edge, which doesn't hit me. And that didn't quite work out anyway. So I go for another Protect here. It's now out of its Hydro Pumps. And Psychic takes down the Electabuzz. And then out comes Snorlax. And then it went for Dragon Breath. Now, if at any point I get paralyzed here, it's basically a loss, I think. So don't get paralyzed there. Shadow End comes out doing a ton of damage to me. I go for a Protect just to heal up what little I can, and hope that Snorlax doesn't hit another. I go for Psychic to take it down, and then Dragon Breath comes out. Doesn't paralyze me on a third one, and I'm able to beat the Kingdra. So that was Zardos on the first attempt. Okay. Well, Gorgon, I assume, is going to be more of the same, and it seems that the Ursaring is in the same predicament it was last time, where it can't hit me. So I'm just going to ignore it, and get a crit on Aggron, which is nice. It sped up the fight just a little bit. Another Psychic. Doesn't quite take down Walrein, which is understandable, it's very tanky. So one more Psychic does take it down. And as I always have to tell myself, Poliwrath is a fighting type. So one Psychic takes it down. All that's left is the Mr. Mime. I go for Shadow Ball into it. And Mr. Mime goes down. And now back to the Ursaring, who can't do anything, and I beat Gorgon on the first attempt. So we move on to Eldis. Now, I do think this could be a difficult fight, but it kind of depends on what Pokemon survive what. So I'm able to take down the Manectric on the first turn. I go for Protect here just to not get hit by Aerial Ace. And I go for Hidden Power, which one-shots the Salamence. Out comes Flygon, another Protect. Aerial Ace, Hidden Power, which takes down the Flygon. Okay. Out comes Marowak. Now this is probably the biggest threat here, because if I can't one-shot it, it'll do either all my health or most of my health in a single hit, which I don't one-shot it, and it takes me down to about a third. So I use Protect to heal up as much as I can. I take it down. And then out comes his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Lapras. Now Lapras really isn't a threat on the first turn because it always sets up Shadow Sky, so I need to do my damage now. And because I'm faster and it's done over half damage, I know I can one-shot it on the next turn. And Psychic takes it down. And then all that's left is the Ninjask, and one Psychic should do it. Aerial Ace doesn't do enough, and it goes down. And that's our Eldis on the first attempt as well. Okay, well this is going very well. I decide to teach Thunderbolt at this point over Hidden Power, because it'll have more effect on the final bosses, which begins with Shadow Lugia. Because Thunderbolt's super effective. It's not quite a one-shot, but also Lugia is very tanky, so that's no surprise. One more Thunderbolt takes it down, and I move on to the final boss against Gorgon. Now he leads with a Moltres and a Rhydon, and Rhydon is a one-shot with Psychic, which is really nice. And Shadow Fire does quite a bit to me, actually. It's about a third of my health. I go for Protect here just to heal up what I can, and it seems like Exeggutor is going for Shadow Storm. Maybe that does more damage at the moment. Anyway, a Thunderbolt's enough to take down the Moltres. Shadow Storm comes out, taking me very low. I go for a Shadow Ball here to see how much it does. It's not a one-shot on Exeggutor, and I go down. So, after popping a few rare candies and getting a little bit better luck than the last couple of attempts, we arrive at attempt number 4. So, I go in, I take down the Rhydon just as before, because I can definitely survive the hits from Moltres a little better. Moltres goes down with a Thunderbolt. And then out comes the Tauros. Shadow Wind hits, taking me down to about half, but I have to take down the Tauros now because Otherwise it'll set up Shadow Sky. Shadow Wind hits again, taking me down to about a quarter of my health, and I go for Protect here just to heal up what I can. Another Thunderbolt actually takes down the Articuno in a single hit, and then out comes Zapdos. Now the thing about Zapdos is that at level 79 it was very close to a one-shot, but I don't know if it was a range, so I go for Thunderbolt here and find out that it is a range. So it's very close to being a one-shot, but I'm probably a level or two off. So I go for a Thunderbolt here, and accidentally misclick and hit the Executor, and so I get brought down to 1 HP. But that's just enough to survive, and I beat Gorgon. So let's go over Gengar line's stats. So it beat the game at 12 hours, 21 minutes, and 58 seconds at level 80, and only fated 21 times. 5 of those being to bosses. That is incredibly low. And 17 of those to random trainers, especially early on. So while I think the trio itself is pretty good, I think that Gastly definitely holds the whole thing back, because unfortunately it doesn't get access to a lot of TMs early on, and on top of that its level up learn set consists mostly of ghost type moves, so it can't attack the normal types it struggles against, and on top of that the ways that it can counteract the normal type hurt it, especially early on, because they're either luck based or they do damage to itself. So it's not that great. But Haunter and Gengar definitely brought it back from where it was. And despite that, it ends up near the bottom of the B tier, right behind Raichu, which is kind of funny because Raichu is in a very similar boat where Pichu holds the whole line back, Pikachu's okay, and then Raichu's pretty good. So it's kind of funny that it ended up there. But anyway, I think with that, that's really all I gotta say on the Gengar line. Pretty fun. Definitely a bit of a struggle early on, but throughout the middle and end section, smoothed right out. And honestly did not struggle against really any of the bosses at any point. Granted, I did do a bit more training than I normally would. But with that, thanks so much for watching. If you have any Pokemon suggestions, put them down below. If you like this video, consider liking and subscribing. And yeah, bye.